Hey guys, this is Joseph Johnson with Ultimate Athlete Concepts. Um, it's been a little bit of time now, and I haven't looked forward to this at all. But as many know in the field, my mentor, Dr. Michael Yessis, passed away last month at the age of 91, peacefully in his sleep. Um, I thought about writing a tribute to him, but I knew that really wouldn't do justice, and it would be a book. So I decided to wait a little bit and let my thoughts collect, and then uh, kind of relay to everyone what his legacy was, what he meant to the field, and then what he meant to me personally. So I met him. It'll be 30 years in April. Would have been our 30th year of working together. Uh, and at the time, I was the athlete, just looking to improve and not knowing anything about the field, you know, from the insider's point of view. I just started to research people who had gotten results, and he was the only person that I had known that was had taken people who were just regular, lower level athletes and transformed them into much higher performing athletes. So I read his book at the time. It might have been a second book. It was Secrets of Soviet Sports and Fitness. Um, I went out to see him a couple months later, and then from that point we were working together first in the just kind of coach athlete kind of way, and then we started to. I had people come to me asking them to help them with their athletic improvement, and so Dr. Yessis and I worked together work with athletes, and that's where I began to really learn more about all the principles behind what was being done, and that kind of evolved over time, and maybe about 10 to 12 years, probably 12 years into our relationship, the idea of publishing came up when Dr. Veroshansky had asked us if we would be interested in uh, translating. It was actually a book that was in English, but it was terrible. So it was essentially translating a book that he had written in English in Moscow, and I didn't know anything about it, but Dr. Yessis had already read the book and said, yeah, he could do it. He didn't want to do it on his own, but he said he would just do the service for me. And so we did that, and that was our first kind of foray into the book business, and the rest is history. I think we're somewhere close to 40 books now. So um, that was kind of how that got started, was with Dr. Yes's expertise in translating, because then other books came along that had to be translated from Russian, and he did those for me, and that's how we kind of got started. And so our relationship kind of evolved over time, and I ended up publishing 5 of his books, one of which was Secrets of Russian Sports Fitness and Training, to reflect the dissolution of the Soviet Union. But it's kind of cool for it to come full circle for me to publish the book that got me into the field to begin with. Um, so over the time, I think because I didn't have a formal education or any certifications or I didn't even suppose to have any knowledge in the field. It was very easy for me to kind of jump into a master apprentice relationship, which to me seems like a natural thing, and probably the wisest thing. If you have somebody who's been at the high end of their field for a long time, and you have a chance to be their apprentice. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. It's why people clerk for a Supreme Court justice, and if you have the chance to be, apprentice to a great artist or great musician, obviously you have to take that because they have knowledge that really very few people have. And so one of the things that I think is interesting with him was because he did not have the Soviet Union research behind him in the universities. He was really kind of a lone wolf here in the United States. It's really remarkable. I think he had a brilliant mind, maybe genius level, because he had to take the very advanced stuff that they were putting out that was significantly ahead of anything that was being published in the United States, and had to make sense of it. And he admitted, and he told me many times, because I didn't understand anything. He said all I realized was they were way, way, way ahead of us, but I didn't understand any of it. And he said it took, about 3 years before the light bulb started to go on and he started to sink in and he could comprehend, what they were writing about, what they were doing. So it's very impressive that he could do that and kind of implement and make practical the things he was learning on his own, because in the Soviet Union a lot of the great scientists and coaches there, they had other people to rely on. Like Dr. Bondarchuk said he could call different experts to help him maybe with specific questions or challenges. So for Dr. Yessis to do that on his own was remarkable. So he went over there, I think it was 3 separate times, and then he met Dr. Verkhoshansky and a number of the other great scientists. Dr. Verkhoshansky also helped contribute to his Soviet Sports Review, which was a journal that he published for 29 years, and this was material that was originally in Russian and translated. So Dr. Yessis really at that point had introduced the United States and the English-speaking world to what the Russians were doing. Up to then, it really kind of didn't exist in a formal way. So the introduction of those concepts happened in 1964. So it's funny when I hear people say things are new or, recently, discovered. It's nonsense. There's nothing new. There hasn't been anything new, at least since, I would say, early 90s, late 80s. And so he had been putting this information out years and years before I was born. And he was the first person to introduce the United States to plyometrics, the shock method. He was the first person to introduce the United States to like special strength training. That was a concept of his, or a concept that he had introduced and then built upon. And then also the ideas of periodization. Those were brand new concepts to the United States. They had not been articulated with any degree of expertise at all. So one of the other things that I thought was brilliant about him, because he got underestimated as people thought, well, he's the translator, he's the guy that kind of passes on the information. He was a scientist very much in his own right, and a coach probably even better, in that area. His work, one of the unique things that he had introduced, and it was under the umbrella of initially working with lower level athletes. So in the Soviet Union, they really weren't looking at how could they work with the lower level athletes better. By that point, in the late 80s, early 90s, they were just looking at what can we do with the higher level athletes. It kind of was a conclusion of the people involved that, hey, we've done everything that can be done with lower level athletes. Now we just need to push with the higher level athletes. And interestingly, he was able to, I thought, to develop better protocols for younger athletes. And one was with the 1x20, which I'll talk about here in just a second. But what he put together for lower level athletes is really ahead of his time. So I'll give you an example. These are things that a lot of people don't know about him or about the system. So, during the 80s, the training loads were still relatively high, I would say, in the Soviet Union. And he had been preaching a long time. He goes, it's not necessary. We need to have lower intensity methods, lower volume methods with the lower level athletes, and probably even with the higher level athletes. And this has kind of borne itself out. And I'll give you 2 examples of the 2 greatest minds in the field. Dr. Verkhoshansky, his daughter Natalia, spoke about this in many years ago now, but on her talk of general adaptation syndrome, where scientists in the 70s had begun to propose that even elite athletes did not need high intensity methods, but probably more of a medium intensity. And through my personal conversations with Dr. Bondarchuk, he said, when I was first coaching, he said my volumes were pretty high. Even when his star pupil Yuri Sadiq broke the world record, he said my volumes were still pretty high in the loading. And he goes, now, from the time in the 70s till now, he said it's about 10% what I recommend now. And he goes, even from the time of Sadiq, he said it's probably maybe 20% volume. So lower volume, lower intensity. And this is being kind of elucidated more now from a few of the experts, where it wasn't back then. There was this presumption that they needed high intensity or higher volume work, but in fact, Dr. Yessis was ahead of his time, because now it's coming out with a few of these people that, in fact, that's not necessary, and it actually could be very counterproductive and might stunt the growth of the athlete. So that's kind of an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. He's been preaching it since I met him in '94, and that whole time, they were other people kind of disagreed. They didn't think so, but in fact, now literally the world's experts. I mean, Dr. Vershansky and Dr. Bondarchuk, greatest scientist, greatest coach of all time. And there's no question about that. They're the brightest people in that area. And you see it with some other people too, leaning in that direction. I know that my dear friend Hank Kreinhoff, says, really need lower volume, lower intensity work. It's not really necessary to get a good result. So that's kind of an interesting thing to show how far ahead he was of everybody else. And I used to tell him all the time, I said, you're a little too far ahead, because he was very underappreciated, kind of pigeonholed in a lot of different ways. A lot of people didn't understand him correctly. They thought because he talked about technique a lot that that's all he believed in, or all he believed in was specialized exercises and stuff. It wasn't that. He just presumed you already knew the other stuff. He was talking about things that were newer, that weren't widely accepted or widely used. But he certainly, obviously he didn't miss that. And one of the things that really did and still irritates me is I hear people, in the field in the United States who are pretty sure that he's not up to snuff with them, which is a comedic nonsense. He has forgotten more stuff than any of the United States people, experts, have learned. And I'll back that up. I'll say that to anyone. I don't care who it is. He was absolutely light years ahead of everyone else. And I've met all the world's experts. So there's very few people who actually can say what I can say. I've met them. I published them, and I know them. So, and the funny thing is that the conversations that I've had with them, and I've been eyewitness to interactions between them and him, and he's respected by them. There's no question that they knew that he had a great deal of expertise, especially for being an American and not having the system. Had he been born in the Soviet Union, had his parents not moved here before he was born, we would be talking about him as maybe the greatest biomechanist and coach in history. So one of the big contributions that we see now is the 1x20. And this was his idea. This was not a Soviet idea, because a lot of the Soviets disagreed, didn't think that maybe this would be as valuable. And I've heard that from them, from their mouth. Turns out it was brilliant. The results don't lie, and there's way too many people now that can substantiate those results. So that's not even a question. It was a great contribution. It's something that I've used, the whole time to great effect. It works wonderful with young athletes. It works wonderful with older athletes. Maybe it's a little bit different tilt, but same idea. It still has great effectiveness, and I think one that can be used throughout the athlete's career. The other thing that he brought to the table, and a lot of people I don't think understand this, is that during the 80s was when the Soviets started to really look at specialized exercises. And having his biomechanics background, he started to really examine this and see how to apply some of them. So I've seen people poo-poo. They're like, well, the knee drive and the paw back, uh, they don't they don't apply as well, and they don't have the same amount of forces involved. And here's the funny part: Dr. Veroshansky actually talked about those exercises himself. Those weren't unique to Dr. Yessis. The funny part is these are the ones that people will kind of question. And the fact of the matter is, Dr. Veroshansky had diagrams of them in his books. If you read any of the books that have been printed into English, you'll see them. He has pictures in there of them being done. So how somebody else is questioning them and saying that they're not valuable is nonsense. I've seen it happen too many times where people have only used the specialized exercises and gotten a significant improvement in speed, for example, just using those exercises. So obviously there's something to it. The results that Doc has gotten with athletes from all over are unmatched. I've never seen anybody get results like that. And I've probably looked more than most anybody else, and I've never seen anybody get better results. And that's the bottom line right there. That's what we're after, and that's what this is all about. So throughout my time, being his apprentice, I didn't know anything. So I'm learning as I go. And it probably took me about 2 years to realize he was the expert on a lot of different things. I was questioning everything because I didn't know any better. So I'm attempting to figure it out and not sure if am I believing in one person and maybe he's not the expert or not an expert. And as time went on, it started to become clear that he was an expert, not the only expert, but an expert, especially amongst English-speaking people. He was, by far, I think, the most knowledgeable. So I would bring him ideas, and he was a no-nonsense guy. He did not play around, and he did not suffer fools. So if he thought something was stupid, he would say so. If he thought you were stupid, he would also say so. And I'd bring him, different things that I'd seen that to me were new, not necessarily weren't to him. He'd be like, that's 30 years old. It's not a new concept. And then, there'd be some people that would come onto the scene and other people are following and kind of becoming enamored with it. And his response was, well, you could spray Estee Lauder on horse shit and still horse shit. And as time would bear out, he was right. Whoever the person was had never really put forth any real results of any significance to talk about. And so it was just interesting to see how as time went on, I thought at year 5, I thought he was incredible. At year 20, I knew he was incredible. He had gone beyond. So as I became more knowledgeable, the more and more I appreciated what he did. I didn't get to a point where I'm like, okay, I know everything that he knows or he has to put out. And okay, now I've got a little bit more of a different viewpoint of him. My esteem for him, my respect for him, and my appreciation for what he did only grew because I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. And then as time went on, I started to go, oh my gosh, this guy knows stuff on such a grand level that I can't even get my head around yet. And it took me time, and it still does. The one thing about the master-apprentice relationship that him and I had is that I loved being the apprentice, and I was always learning. I was always asking questions and learning something new. And the biggest thing that I miss now is I can't call him and ask him those questions anymore. And that's tragic for me because I know that a lot of things, a lot of knowledge went with him and won't ever be retrieved again. But I definitely, have a great appreciation for that. That being able to call, someone on that world-class level and ask questions was really pretty cool. And there's some pseudo experts out there, that have claimed to do something new be more advanced. Not true. I haven't seen anything new out there, and I haven't seen anything more advanced in the past 30 years at all. And more importantly, I haven't seen anybody put out a better result. So that's all that matters. So you hear a lot of chatter. I even hear people like questioning him or being condescending to him. It's ridiculous. Um, and I won't ever back off of that statement at all. So, his contributions to the field are enormous. A lot, and some of them are ones that we don't realize because a lot of the things that have been integrated, later are things that we became accepting of were there because he first introduced them, right? So a lot of the great concepts and effective ideas that we've used were born in the Soviet Union or in Russia. And so we owe that to him. All of those introduction of those things, we owe him the credit for. So beyond all of the different things, his contributions to the field, and all of that, what he had accomplished, there's a lot of personal effect that he had on me and on others, and for me, that's even more important. So, being his apprentice, I would have people, call, reach out to me, and ask questions about what we did. And now here at this stage, I'm kind of the old man, and I've had a lot of younger guys call me asking for my help or wanted to learn. And one of the things that now stands out to me is the remarkable effect that he's had on other people's careers. There's guys that I've been around, been involved with, whose trajectory of their career was changed after our introduction and learning the ideas that Dr. Yessis had promoted and had formulated. And they got to know Doc personally too. And, I did my best to interpret as I could. And so their careers were changed, and the lives of the athletes that they've dealt with have been, changed for the better by a long shot. So there's a number of us, like me for more than anyone, because I was very close with him for quite a number of years. I owe everything to him: the publishing business, the coaching. Meeting him changed the trajectory of my entire life, uh, and I'm grateful for that. I learned a skill set that can't be learned in college. You can't get a certification, uh, and really is not duplicatable anymore. To be honest, now that he's gone, um, and so probably the other thing that really I think is that I value the most about him is that the impact that he's had on the athletes that I've worked with personally. There have been a lot of scholarships given to athletes because of him, with the work that we did together, that I helped him with. Um, it makes a huge impact on someone's life. There's kids who were not talented athletes whom we turned that completely around, and now they're playing. I can think of kids right now that are playing college sports right now because of him. And I've got one athlete that probably will be playing professional sports within the next 2 to 3 years because of him, and that is the reason. So that's huge. And these kids, they don't know, they're so young they don't understand that, but it's made a huge impact on those individuals' lives. And lastly, and most importantly to me, my middle son has been using Dr. Yessis' ideas for the past decade, and he has no gifting athletically. He had no talent, no natural skill, nothing. He really had nothing. And just through consistent effort and using the ideas that Dr. Yessis put forth, he's playing college basketball this fall against all odds at 5'9", no athletic ability. Um, he's going to be playing college basketball this fall, and obviously super proud of that, super grateful, because it would not have happened without Dr. Yessis, no question. So for that, probably more than anything, that's what I'm most grateful for, because he helped make my son's dream come true. And that's pretty remarkable. And as far as our personal relationship, I loved him like he was family. Um, he was prickly at times and grouchy, or uh, you know, I don't want to say high maintenance, but yeah, high maintenance, I guess. But I loved him. I love that about him, actually. I like that he was no nonsense. You knew what he was thinking. He said what he thought, and he didn't mince words, and he didn't try to save everyone's feelings. He really didn't care. And I like that, because I'd rather just know where I stand with people and let them just tell me the real truth, as opposed to pussyfooting around everything. So I loved his disposition and nature, and I had no problem. I was raised partly by my great grandparents, who were even older than him, and so I was raised to have great respect for my elders and people who were older, much older. And he was old enough to be my grandfather, and so to me, he was great. And one other thing that really meant a lot to us. So he was able to help us because he had a lot of health issues. So he had learned a great deal in nutritional biochemistry on how to deal with different health ailments. And a lot of times when my kids were sick, I would call him and as a first line to see if he could figure out what was wrong. And I have to say, in every single event, he would figure out what was wrong, get the right fix, and the kids would recover way faster than they otherwise would have. And the thing that was remarkable about him is that he would do that, and then 2 days later, he'd call me to see how they were doing. He always checked up on all the kids and my wife. He checked up on them to make sure everything was okay, and that they were progressing. And a lot of people wouldn't know that about him, but he was a softie in that way. And he was always great with my kids. They really liked him. He was great with my wife. My wife loved him. Um, and like I said, he was just like family to me. I didn't think of him in any other way. I would have done anything for him when he needed it, and he went way out of his way for me. He's very patient, and took his time teaching me. Somebody who's totally ignorant and doesn't know anything. He trained me from that level up to a level to where I could be very competent at what I was doing. So he'll be missed tremendously by me. He is missed by me tremendously. And he left a hole in the field that I don't think can be filled properly. And my hope is that at least he gets appreciated for what he did and what he was, what he gave to the field, because many people are progressing and doing much better than they otherwise would have been had it not been for him. So that's about all there is to say. And I hope that someday he gets the credit that he's due.